Good morning, everyone. Welcome in. We're going to give it 2 more minutes as folks trickle in past 10 o'clock. Thanks for joining. All right, we'll do a 1-minute warning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome in. We'll get going at 4 after here.
Great.
All right, I'm going to kick us off to respect everyone's time. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Jeff Belisario. I'm the Executive Director of the Bay Area Council's Economic Institute. For those of you that are new to the Bay Area Council, the Council is a 75-year-old business advocacy organization based in San Francisco. We cover the 9-county Bay Area. I'm often looking at California issues as well, things that we view as key to the long-term health of the economy, like housing, transportation, homelessness, education, workforce. Basically, name a topic and we cover it. The Economic Institute's the Council's think tank. So we make a lot of charts and graphs and write reports for government clients, for philanthropy, for private clients, on a number of key topic areas that we think are key to the future of the Bay Area's economy, the future of the California economy. So today, we're pleased to release, in partnership with the Sobrato Philanthropies, our report on the economic benefits of multilingual learning, which we think obviously, as the state grows, becomes a more and more important issue for the state's economic health. A lot of research has been done on the educational benefits. Our research, which we'll summarize today, goes over many of the economic benefits. So just a bit of a roadmap. I'm going to pass it over quickly to our research manager, Abby Raisz, to summarize our report findings. And then we'll have an all-star panel led by Zadie Stavely. She's an award-winning journalist from EdSource, covers bilingual education, early education, and immigration. And I'll let her introduce the panelists when we get there. But again, we're really excited to release this report today. You can find it at bayareaeconomy.org and on our Twitter at Bay Area Economy. And with that, thank you again for joining. And I'm going to kick it over to Abby to talk about our findings. Go ahead, Abby.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Like Jeff said, my name is Abby Raisz. I'm a research manager at the Bay Area Council Economic Institute, and I'm one of the co-authors of this report. Just to give a bit of background, California's status as sort of an economic powerhouse and destination for immigrants makes our state a really optimal place to study this and to lead the implementation of multilingual programs to sort of meet our growing economic need for bilingualism in the state and provide economic opportunity for immigrant and first-generation children. As the study points out, there's increasing evidence that multilingual programs don't come at the cost of academic performance in other subjects. Multilingual instruction allows students to really celebrate their home language while achieving English proficiency, ideally at a very young age. So the principal benefit is sort of lacking. This principal benefit is lacking sort of traditional bilingual programs, which sort of prevents true bilingualism, a skill that, as I'll go into in some of my later slides, is increasingly in demand across multiple industry sectors and regions. So I'm going to go over some of the high-level findings from the report, and then we'll segue into our panel discussion with some wonderful panelists who will dive deeper on some of these topics. So to start, I thought I'd throw out a couple of key definitions before I get into the nitty-gritty, since they'll probably be used many times this morning. The title of our report is The Economic Benefits of Multilingual Learning. Some of you may be more familiar with this term or more familiar with the term dual language learning. The precise definitions of these two terms sort of vary entity to entity. They're often based on sort of a organization's funding mechanism or some other reason. But the California Department of Education defines multilingual learners as students who have developed or are developing proficiency in both English and one or more other languages, which may be their home language. and they may mostly be dominant in one language or proficient in both. So Early Edge, a nonprofit advocacy group that we'll hear from later this morning, defines dual language learners as children birth to age 5 who are learning 2 or more languages at the same time, or are learning a second language while continuing to develop their first or home language. So due to these sort of differences between these terms, largely the fact that dual language learners typically refers to sort of younger generations of children, this report utilizes the term multilingual learners, sort of a broader encapsulation of related subgroups of these language learners. On top of that, the Department of Education in the state in particular has promoted the term multilingual learner. So just wanted to put that out there, that is why we stuck with that terminology. English learners, on the other hand, simply refer to students who sort of lack clearly defined English language skills necessary to succeed in schools' regular instructional programs. These students can be multilingual learners, but more typically are enrolled in these traditional transitional bilingual programs, which I'll explain in this chart to sort of dive deeper into the differences in these programs, because it can get a bit convoluted and confusing. Transitional bilingual programs, as you can see sort of in the bottom teal, that first bullet, have long been the preference for bilingual instruction. So these are programs that are designed to temporarily support an English learner's home language as they become accustomed to sort of English dominant instruction. So as they achieve English proficiency, native instruction or native language instruction is sort of phased out of instruction. So this model does not further advance a student's home language. There are also language programs open to all students up here in the orange, so foreign language programs, world language programs, but multilingual programs sort of come in 2 forms: one-way immersion programs and 2-way immersion programs. So you can see the one-way immersion programs represented both in the sort of orange and teal sections are often advertised as sort of enrichment strategies targeted towards a group of students from one language background. This has been found to raise the reading scores of multilingual learners, but not really to the same degree as 2-way multilingual immersion programs, which you can see as sort of the nexus of these 2 things. So this is often referred to as the gold standard of multilingual education. So these programs tend to result in the greatest academic achievements for students. So unlike one-way immersion programs, which are really designed for English speakers or speakers of a specific language to learn a non-English language or learn an English language, 2-way immersion programs combine multilingual learners and native English speakers together, which allows learning to occur in both directions. So one of the big challenges with these programs is sort of balancing enrollment at a young age by language. So maintaining that balance over time can be a challenge. But overall, these programs are structured to keep multilingual learners within these programs even after they reach English proficiency. So it's not just to transition out. It's really to build these skills over time alongside native English speakers as well. And one study, and there's many studies like this that have been done in different school districts, but one study in Portland, Oregon's public schools found that students randomly assigned to multilingual immersion programs outperformed their peers on state reading tests by 13% in grade 5 and 22% in grade 8. So this is just one of many studies sort of bolstering the case for these programs and their outcomes. So I have some slides to sort of frame what makes California different from most states when it comes to our population, our foreign-born population, and why, again, these programs have been especially needed for our state's younger school-aged children. So 27% of California's population is foreign-born, compared to 14% nationwide. In addition, half of all children in the state have at least one immigrant parent. Most of the state's immigrants come from Latin America, so around 50%, or Asia, around 40%, with the primary countries of origin being Mexico, Philippines, China, Vietnam, and India. But of those who arrived more recently, so between 2010 and 2019, over half came from Asia, and actually only 31% came from Latin America, which I think indicates a really interesting and important demographic shift to sort of ensure that programs are taught in languages other than Spanish in many parts of the state where these populations are growing. So unsurprisingly, what I showed you in the last slide, California is unique in its share of multilingual children. So nearly 60% of young children, so aged 5 or younger, in California live in a multilingual household, meaning that at least one parent speaks a language other than English, versus 33% nationwide. So that's a gap of over 25%. And the last bit of framing on population. So California's population growth has been slowing, and this is really nothing new, but rather sort of a part of a several decades long trend in decreasing birth rates, increasing death rates, domestic outmigration, and lower international immigration. The state's white population has actually shrunk every single decade by about 1 million people since 1990. Still, in the most recent census count, the state added 2.3 million people, and this was almost entirely driven by an increase in the Hispanic or Latinx population. So that group accounted for nearly 70% of the state's total population growth. And the overwhelming majority of this population is young and getting younger. So this group has the highest percentage of school-aged individuals than any other racial or ethnic group in the state. So 30% of the Hispanic or Latinx population is under 20 years old, compared to 24% the Asian or Pacific Islander population and 20% for the white population. So moving on, California's racial and ethnic diversity obviously translates into incredible linguistic diversity across the state. Unsurprisingly, in the most commonly spoken language other than English in California is Spanish, but this is especially pronounced among English learner students. So the share of Spanish-speaking English learners is nearly 20 percentage points higher than their share of the overall population. And due to a much higher share, as I showed in the last slide, of school-aged children in the Hispanic or Latinx population than in other groups. And while these Asian languages such as Mandarin, Tagalog, Vietnamese account for a smaller share of English learners, kindergartners see higher shares of these speakers. As I mentioned before, Asian immigrant groups are growing faster in the youngest population of kids. So the greater linguistic diversity among kindergartners really illustrates a growing and current demand for instruction in multiple languages. So since the 2014-2015 school year, California's English learner enrollment has sort of steadily declined. So you could ask, why are multilingual programs sort of needed when the number of English learners is decreasing? So this decline is actually in large part attributable to an increase in students reclassifying as they call fluent English proficient. So as students achieve English proficiency and are reclassified, they actually no longer count as an English learner at all. So in order to sort of fully examine the scope of multilingual learners, it's really essential to evaluate these two groups together here. So this chart illustrates sort of the decreasing ratio of English learners to reclassified fluent English proficient students from kindergarten to grade 12. And this pattern just sort of demonstrates how quickly younger children are able to adopt a new language to achieve English proficiency, and why multilingual programs at an early age, especially before grade 3, is optimal. So moving into sort of why this matters in a long-term way, there's sort of a growing consensus among researchers and the business community that the labor market is increasingly globalizing, right? So this demands that more employees have multilingual experience or skills. The rising number of non-English speakers and consequently the rising number of young bilingual children indicates that the future of the U.S. workforce will be, increasingly multilingual. So studies have shown that businesses and sectors that require interpersonal skills like healthcare, so nurses, medical assistants, mental health counselors, sectors like leisure and hospitality, sales, prefer to hire folks with multilingual skills, and really they view multilingualism as an asset. So based on data from a labor market analytics tool that sort of scrapes millions of job postings each week, we put together this chart that shows the increase of total job postings in California that requested applicants with bilingual skills from 2010 to 2020. So postings nearly quadrupled in that span of time. And while this raw increase is sort of important to note, it also can be influenced by just employers increasingly advertising jobs online, a general increase in jobs within sectors that seek bilingual skills. For these reasons, it's important to look at these numbers as a share of total job postings. So in 2010, 1% of postings in California sought bilingual skills. In 2020, this increased to 2%. No, it doesn't seem like much, but that was a pretty big jump given how many postings there are in California. And it also grew at a faster rate than the United States as a whole. And by industry, the healthcare industry really dominates these postings. So this industry accounts for 25% of total bilingual postings in California. By occupation, registered nurses account for the largest share of postings that request bilingual skills at 13%. Registered nurses also represent one of the most abundant jobs in terms of overall vacancies and postings. So this really indicates a need for bilingual programs that are maybe more targeted at the healthcare sector, given both their higher pay than service or retail sectors typically, and just their overall abundance in the current job market. So overall, bilingual postings are not only keeping up with the growth rate of job postings overall, but they're actually exceeding them. And this trend is occurring on both a national and statewide level. So finally, what does this mean for a household's earning potential? This chart illustrates median household income by earning quartile and English speaking proficiency. So for the bottom 20% of earners, median earnings are mostly comparable between households that do not speak English and households that speak English well or fluently, but also another language at home. But as households move up the earning spectrum, disparities widen substantially between linguistically isolated and non-linguistically isolated households. The pay gap actually grows to over $100,000 for the top 20% of earners. So this gap sort of represents the rough estimate of a multilingual learner's earning potential when given the opportunity to both reach English fluency and speak a non-English home language. And lastly, if non-English speaking households earned the same income as bilingual households in California, we estimate that they would collectively earn across the state $30 billion more annually, or around $15,000 more per household. So this analysis controls for age and educational attainment. So we're comparing, like groups to each other. For example, how much more do bilingual 26 to 35-year-olds with a bachelor's degree earn than non-English speakers in the same age and education group. And we found that based on the living wage calculator from researchers at MIT, these per household increases could afford a family a year of childcare for one child, a year of transportation expenses, a year of groceries based on the USDA's low-cost food plan, or a full year of medical expenses. So clearly, California has a really unique opportunity to foster early language skills in its over 2 million multilingual children by implementing more of these programs across the state. But for California to really thrive into the future, multilingual learning has to be cultivated as sort of an asset that will create economic opportunity for the next generation and fuel our state's economy. So we have a lot of other interesting charts and graphs and analyses in our report. So please check that out on our website after this. I'll share a link in the chat right after I wrap up. You can also, I think Jeff mentioned that you can check out our Twitter at Bay Area Economy, where we'll be sharing some of these findings and some of these charts in the coming days. Thanks so much. I think I will pass it to Zadie next to introduce our panel.
Thank you, Abby. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm Zadie Stavely. I'm a reporter at EdSource. And our panel today is Patty Chavez. She's the head of external relations for SEAL, which is a nonprofit that provides training and curriculum for multilingual programs statewide. Patricia Lozano, she's the executive director of Early Edge California, which is a nonprofit that advocates for high quality early education for children, from birth through age 8. And Patrick Kallerman, he is the vice president of research at the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. Nice to have you all here today. My first question is, Abby laid out the benefits, the economic benefits, which we so often don't, really hear about. So I'm really happy to hear that. Given those benefits, what do you all think California is doing right? And what do we still have to do or do more of to really expand multilingual programs in the state? I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Patty?
Sure, I'll jump in. Thank you very much. It is great. Those numbers are fantastic. And I think this helps the advocacy and the work being done throughout California. I think one is to share that because of the work of collaboratives and advocates here in California, we have some of the strongest policies in the nation. We've implemented the English Learner Roadmap, the Seal of Biliteracy, the Global California 2030 Initiative. So we've set this very strong strategic vision based on what we're seeing in trends, right? Based on the response from families, based of what we need for a global economy. But we still need a little bit more investment in order to bring that vision to fruition. districts can't do it alone. So when we're looking at whether it's a district or a municipality, a county, or our business leaders, we can't do that alone. And we really need resources to build this and to bring it to fruition. So I would say as we're working on these wonderful initiatives and more that are coming our way, and I know Patricia will talk a little bit more about what's coming up, we do need the resources to build these evidence-based practices, to recruit, to train, to retain specifically bilingual teachers that will expand dual immersion programs that have become a huge demand in California, and rightly so based on the numbers that we're seeing. So we need materials that are available in all languages, and we need teacher support. We need to support our teachers to provide them professional development that requires significant investment. And it's ongoing. It's not just one time. We recently saw, unfortunately it didn't pass, but a bill, SB 952, that had bipartisan support. We didn't get money for it. We didn't get funding, and it's not going to be the last time we're going to continue the conversation. We just need more dollars to students, to school districts, to teachers, and to our families, so that our students can be part of these dual language opportunities.
Patricia, do you want to add?
Sure. Good morning. I think that what California is doing well is taking the first steps to recognize the importance of starting early, right? That we need to invest in early childhood, because that's when the brain is making all these connections, and it's when most of the kids just speak, when they're dual language learners, they speak most of their home language. And it's like so important to support both, the English learning and supporting home language from the beginning, right? We don't want to miss that amazing time for these connections to happen. So California, invested $5 million a few years ago for training and development, keeps putting money to support dual language language programs, all the other things that Patty mentioned. But I think that this is, for a state like California, it's just the beginning, right? We want all kids to have the opportunity to attend dual language programs starting in pre-K, TK, right? And also we need supports for all teachers and how to, work with DLLs. So I think we took the first steps, and also with AB 1363, because we know it's so important to give teachers the resources to know how to identify DLLs. That's the first thing. We need to know who are we serving, it was a great win. But there's
can you explain for those who might not know what AB 1363 is?
Yes, sure. So last year, the Governor Newsom signed AB 1363, and what's going to happen is that state preschool programs are now going to be required to identify DLLs that they're attending their programs, and the Department of Education is going to provide what we call like asset-based, meaning that it's all based on positive, the benefits of bilingualism. So providers are going to have a group of tools, family interviews and forms that will let them get to know the families, get to know the language they speak at home, get that data, and then that will give us advocates more data to say we need more supports for teachers, once we know who are we serving, for them to get the training they need. So right now we have some estimates of how many DLLs are in California, but this will give us a better picture, and for providers to get to know their families, and also for families to feel and learn about the importance of supporting home language. So this is huge. And I think California is the only state in the US doing this. So it's very innovative, and other states are looking at us to learn and really make this happen for all kids.
Patrick, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just remark that, on the economic front, this is an economy that's built largely on talent, right? Both LA and Silicon Valley requires a massive amount of the right type of talent. And so keeping California's talent pipeline going is, something that the state always needs to be thinking about, and we always need to be thinking about in a forward-looking manner. And so I think several of the slides that Abby presented show that there's an increasing demand from our employers for these types of workers. And it's probably understated, if anything, right? These job postings are tricky to get, and they don't always fully encompass what employers are looking for. And so I think in the globalized economy going forward, if California wants to position itself as a place where business can grow and where the talent is, we need to invest in these children now, and it'll surely pay dividends above and beyond the 30 billion that Abby described.
Yeah, I noticed actually in the slides that teachers and childcare providers were not on there. And I was like, actually, that's a huge need, is for more bilingual teachers and early educators.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we did our best. This is a little bit of a tricky topic to get at, just kind of data wise. That's another thing that the state could do, right, is begin collecting better data. The education system, the census, there are other surveys the state does that could begin collecting better data so that we could get a better look at this. But, my gut tells me, after working on this project with Abby for almost a year, is that if anything, all of this stuff is underreported, right? And so, I mean, yeah, it's funny that teachers didn't show up there. And I'm sure there's a variety of other things that we can think about, that if we went out on the street and we talked to someone who's looking to hire for these jobs, they would tell us that, oh yeah, we would love folks to be multilingual. And they just don't show up in the data yet. But I'm sure that the demand is there above and beyond what we've described here.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the added benefits of dual language immersion programs or other multilingual programs, basically? Programs that really emphasize, just reminding everybody that when we talk about multilingual programs, we're talking about programs that both emphasize learning English, but also reinforcing and retaining home language. I'm just curious what other added benefits you all have seen. As a reporter, I recently wrote about just the benefit of increasing enrollment, just because of the demand for multilingual programs. Some districts and some schools, specifically schools, have been able to stop declining enrollment just by starting, it's a big task, but by starting a multilingual program. So I wrote about a couple of districts in San Jose that started Vietnamese programs, a Vietnamese program, a Mandarin program, and basically their enrollment, was going down like this, and it went up. And the same in, Glendale Unified has a really strong example of a school that was going to be closed, and the enrollment was going down. And then they started several different multilingual programs. So they started a German program, Italian, Spanish, and French program, and their enrollment just increased exponentially. So Patricia, have you seen, what other benefits would you like, to share with others?
Yeah, I think in addition to that, it's just so much better for dual language learners. We've seen research that they outperform their peers that only go to English only. So we know it's better for dual language learners to attend programs that are bilingual. And connected to that is if they have that opportunity, they are going to have a better chance to keep their home language, which we know it's so important for brain development, but also for, self-confidence and keeping your culture and really feeling part of, right, and belonging to, and being able to communicate with your family members. So many benefits from that. And then also what Patty was saying, the long-term benefits of bilingualism that we know, kids just have better attention, are more creative, better at analytics. And then, with economic benefits of more chances to get a job, graduate high school, so many things that are where we're saying is 2 is better than 1. It is just down to that for both dual language learners and English only speakers. So I think the evidence is clear. We just need to get the funding and the supports from the state, so all kids have the opportunity to access these programs.
Patty?
Yeah, I was recently actually in the Bay Area at Oak Grove Unified School Districts to see our programs in action and see these dual language programs in action. The kids were engaged. They were having fun. The teachers were having fun, but it was also rigorous. We had these kindergartners who were using these big words, and I speak Spanish. I don't even understand these words, and they're engaging and they're chatting, and that's what we need in our program, especially for our English learners. In order for them to master English proficiency, it's to master their home language as well. It creates a connection for them, and as they're going through the class and going through the pathways. I was in a kindergarten class where I think it was 80% Spanish, 20% English. By the time they got to 5th grade, you couldn't tell. I mean, the English and Spanish, it was perfection. It was beautiful. And I think that interaction, the engagement, that identity that they have as someone who was dual language going into preschool, but then back in the day, right, we weren't allowed to speak Spanish in school anymore. So it was English only when it came to academic. So there was an impact to family engagement as well. So I think that's the other piece is, as we're, especially for our English learners, that they're able to go home to speak about, the schoolwork, to engage with their parents. Their parents then get very involved in the classroom, helps the student academic, but also helps that school environment when there's family engagement. I did a lot of work in STEM before. That is specifically an area that one is we need to grow and look at, but for our families to feel that they can engage and talk with their children and support them, and not feel like my dad thought that he would hurt my academics if he spoke to me in Spanish with my, and helped me with my homework. We now know the research doesn't say that, right? So this is also helping that stigma, so families can also feel engaged. Love what you said about the declining enrollment. That's definitely what we're seeing in California, especially because there's such an overwhelming need for that. So, there's so many aspects of this, but that language development, the academics, and the engagement also helps our teachers and for their own joy of teaching and supporting their schools and their students as well.
I've heard so many people say something similar to what you mentioned, Patty, just especially teachers who are now, working in bilingual programs, but who as children did not have the opportunity to speak their home language at school, or were reprimanded or, disciplined for it. And just that mental health aspect of it, basically, the emotional aspect. And I'd like to, before Patrick chimes in, I'd like to just add one thing, which is, some of my work has also focused on integration. And I just think that dual immersion programs that is another benefit, which is you're bringing together at least in many cases, many more kinds of backgrounds of students. So, students who speak English at home, who speak different dialects of English at home, who speak, Spanish or Vietnamese or, Hmong or Mandarin at home, and who come together, and then they have, beyond the language, they also are bringing together, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and they can learn from each other. And there's so much research that shows that that's important for all kids. Patrick, do you want to add?
Yeah, what I'll add is kind of, tying back to the workforce and education piece, but, like you all just mentioned, I mean, anything that the state can do, California, once a beacon of public education, now we're seeing, I mean, of course, it depends on the district and county and area of the state, but, largely seeing a lot of our ratings decline in education when compared to other states. And again, this has been a lifeblood of California for going on, 60, 70 years. So again, as Abby described, we have a huge proportion of our children who fall into these categories, and anything that we can do, to increase to enrich their educational lives, to get them the education they need, to get all of us, right, just, to lift all Californians up, will be good for the state. I mean, so again, I think that this is something, economically speaking, is a tremendous investment.
Patty, I know SEAL works with districts statewide, both kind of, I think, from preschool all the way K through 12, mostly elementary school, right?
To 6th grade, yes.
Okay, so through 6th grade. And I'm I'd love for you to just share some examples. I know there's so much demand for more multilingual programs, and we spoke a little bit about, SB 952 and how that didn't have, that was a bill that it did not pass, because it didn't actually have the money in the budget. And it was supposed to be for grants for expanding multilingual programs. I'm curious, what on the ground, kind of like from the district perspective, what have you heard from districts or schools? What kind of obstacles have they run into when thinking about trying to expand multilingual programs?
Sure. Well, first, I wanted to complete a thought. We were talking about the building community, and maybe this goes along with it. When we look at schools, and I love local initiatives and local policies, because there may be food deserts, there may be other kind of deserts in our communities, but there's always a school. There's always a school at the heart of every community. And you mentioned when you create a strong school community, it will trickle out into the rest of the area and create strong community. And I think that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing that definitely for the response for families and for school districts to expand their dual language programs. I think in terms of obstacles, the declining enrollment, the need for materials, the need for materials that are translated in various languages. Our teachers need those resources. They need them ready, available. And those are some of the aspects of, even books, when we're looking at our local schools, books in different languages that will help continue to grow and support their best practice teaching. I think also when we're looking at class sizes, and I believe you may have written about this, which I didn't, at the time, I didn't even recognize. You have kinder, first grade, second grade, there's a certain amount of kids that are supposed to be in that class. Once they get to third grade, that class expands. We need to add more kids into that classroom. If a school district hasn't embraced and brought in dual language programs throughout their school district, it may be difficult for that one school then to add kids that have taken dual language programs from first grade, second grade. So then you may have a mix of students maybe who haven't been in the dual language program, which creates a challenge, right? And can impact the quality of the delivery of the practice. So I think in those terms is really looking at what pathways can we provide, not just for our educators to increase bilingual certified teachers, hope I'm saying that correctly, but really what pathways can we give to our school districts also, so they can expand and grow and respond to their community, and especially in these needs. And I wanted to add, as we're looking at the school district specifically, and because we're speaking to business leaders, our business leaders do know what's coming up. They have the forecast. We talked about trends right now. We know what's coming in the next 5, 10, 20 years. We should, right? We want our economy to keep growing. That's an aspect and information that would be golden for schools too. What do they need? What do they need to provide to create a workforce that's going to respond to the needs of our economy in 10, 15, 20 years? And while we most definitely need to still consider our higher education or high school and going into higher education, we can't forget the little ones. And if we're building, and Patricia could allude to this is where it's going to start. And we start investing in early education all the way through the elementary school, then you don't have to try to add a different language as you're going into high school, like some of us did. That's very challenging. We could start looking to the future, start building that, and start providing some building curriculum, because that takes a really long time, right? Government is kind of slow, but if we all work together and we hear from our business leaders and their strong voice of what's needed for the future, we can help our school districts and school leaders develop those aspects for our teachers and our students in the future.
Thank you so much, Patty. Actually, speaking to that, Patricia focuses on early education. And I know, you've worked with early education programs in many different places to leverage multilingual programs and multilingualism, basically. how does, now California is expanding TK so that we can have all 4-year-olds have a free year of public preschool before kindergarten. And I'm curious how you think that expansion of TK could play into this or help the state expand multilingual programs.
Well, I think this is a great opportunity to start early, right? As programs are thinking how to expand TK, I mean, just doing it from the beginning as a dual language program, right? I think that part of our goal and one of the key things we want to do is facilitate that process so schools can have the opportunity to do that. Of course, they need funding. So as one of our priorities is to continue to advocate for funding so schools can have the option, but also you have to make a case, right, and get the leadership first to understand the importance of early childhood, which we have progress, but still there's a lot of work to do, and then start with dual language programs from the beginning, because we know that's the best way, right? Do not wait, because it's like so much harder for kids if you start in high school, which is a lot of the times what happens, right? But we know we have the evidence, we have the research. So I see this as an opportunity, and I've heard it from the field, right? It's like, well, we have to do this, right? We have to provide this new program. Why not just do it as a dual language program from the beginning? And we, so for example, with the Peter 3 credential too, which is happening, we're also saying, let's do dual language learners too there. So every initiative that the state is like investing in, I think if we do dual language from the beginning and provide, the funds and also the information, because you have to get the buy-in, right? It's like from teachers and from administrators to say, yes, let's invest. And then it is, also both having the program, but the professional development, right? That like programs like SEAL, because it's just not one time and done. It has to be a constant process where teachers need the support of, depending on, which grade, right? You need to know how to work. And there's so many things you can do, even if you're not a bilingual teacher. And that's what we see when we go in the classroom and the teachers are like, oh, I didn't know that I could do all these things in my classroom, even though I don't speak the language. Because as we know, multilingual learners, multilingual classrooms, I mean, it is impossible to speak 10 languages, right? But there's so many things that you can, do in the classroom to have it welcoming to, especially for kids that it's their first experience, and then they see, oh, there's a book like that I can read. I can bring.
Can you share some of those things? Because I know you've shared these with me before, and I think that they're really, I think they're pretty powerful. Like even if you don't speak a child's language or not all of your children's languages, you can still create a really powerful, supportive multilingual environment.
Yeah, I think that's the first step, right? It's like the environment. So, when you go in a place and then you see pictures of kids that look like you, right? And then you see there's like this open room for art and other things that it's not like specific to a culture or so I think that it's just, there's so much power to setting up the environment. And that's the first step, right? Because there is a big range of activities and things you can do, between just having an inclusive environment and having a bilingual program. So, but that's the first step, right? So having books, inviting parents to come and share about their culture, having like, opportunities for parents to come and read to the kids in different languages, playing music in different languages. So many things that you can do, which it is not like a bilingual program. It has to be intentional, right? It's not just having the book there and like, that's it, but engaging kids and having the opportunity for them, for example, if kids speak the same language, share that, and then bring someone who maybe speaks English only, right? So there is like the environment, but the intentionality of the teacher or the provider to create those connections, right? So that's where the professional development is so important, right? That you have this, you have to be aware and see where these opportunities for learning happen naturally too, right? Organically, where kids start to, socialize in that environment is created and welcoming. So I think that that's the first step. And then there are so many other things you can do, which may require you speaking one of the languages or the language that the program decides to support, right? But before that, you can do a lot, and then will help the confidence and will help, create the right environment for learning.
Thank you so much. We're going to open it up to questions now from the public. So feel free to ask a question. Just unmute yourself or write the question in the chat. Anyone have questions? Well, in the meantime, I wanted to mention that someone mentioned a teacher, needing more bilingual teachers, or maybe I mentioned it and then someone else mentioned it as well. And I just wanted to, mention also that there are some really innovative programs to try to get or prepare more bilingual teachers. And I think one of the ones that most surprised me or sort of interested me is a program to sort of develop people who are already in education, aides, lunch people, bus drivers, people who are already working in education, maybe in the after school program as well, who want to become teachers, but maybe have not been able to go through college. And there are some really interesting programs. There's one through County Office of Education that works with San Diego State to try to prepare some of these education staff to become teachers. And the thing that's really cool about it to me is that they already have, the multilingual skills. And it's just that the need to get the credential and get a little bit more preparation in order to become teachers in the classroom. And I think there are some other interesting, ways that different people are working to try to prepare more bilingual teachers. Is there anything else anyone would like to add, or any questions from the audience? Oh, here, I have a question. Are you aware of any types of grants or financial support to help nonprofit educational groups that are teaching a foreign language? Does anyone want to respond to that? I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. If you want to unmute yourself and explain.
Yes, so thank you so much, everybody, for the presentation. It's a little loud here. That's why my apologies, thought I would text. But we are in like a Saturday language school. And so I feel it's definitely very challenging because we're not part of the larger languages that are kind of spoken in California. So as a nonprofit in general, it's hard to find support. It's hard to ask for parents' support. And so I am doing my best to keep the school going. It's only 100 students, but the most of them are very young learners. So in general, I'm just wondering if there's any kind of guidance or support that you might be aware of. And it doesn't have to be financial. I think even understanding, different language groups that are doing well and being successful, if they have any ideas or tips for how to function better and to stay afloat so that we can help drive exactly what you're all presenting, I would be very grateful.
I don't know about like a specific financial support, but Early Edge has been working on a toolkit, the multilingual toolkit, that it's available online, and I'll add the link to it, and it has resources for teachers. It's starting preschool through 3rd grade. I don't know, you said young students, but I don't know how young.
Yeah, they're 3 years of age through adult, but we tend to have more younger students, and so it's not Spanish spoken, but they are able to take exams from the European governments, so that it's kind of helping them too. But a multilingual toolkit sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd happily learn about that.
Yeah, and these are free resources, so you can, oh, there you go. Thank you, Joanna. So you can access it for free and download, and We will always add more, and our idea is to also expand and add for younger kids too. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we can, provide additional supports or training. Oh yeah.
And there are also, Patty put SEALs resources on the chat as well. And there are also, for other school folks who are watching, you can also look up EL Rise, which is one of the coalitions that is working to do professional development to try to reach the Global 2030 initiative. So they all have different resources, tools, videos, different things that can help folks working in education. Any other questions? Okay, this is a question for Bay Area Council. The jobs requiring bilingual or multilingual skills, are the compensations actually higher for those jobs?
Do you want to take this one, Abby?
That's not something we looked at. It's a little bit hard to actually track that in some of these job postings, but yeah, it's hard to know specifically for within occupations, like for instance, a registered nurse who is going to be utilizing some sort of bilingual skill versus a registered nurse that speaks only English. It's very hard to drill down to salary differences there. So a lot of the stuff that we were doing with median incomes was sort of the best estimates that we could do, but that's a great question. Just one of those things with big data limitations.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
Question for the folks, Steve Kellner, California Education Partners. My question is about advocating to California school board members. I think we can all agree that there's more resources needed, but there needs to be a commitment to the programs that you described, and it takes a little bit of political will. So I'm wondering what advice or what ideas you'd have about folks advocating to their local school boards before Sacramento, makes this big investment, which we hope they do.
I think it's a great idea, and we do. And Patty, I know you're at the Californians Together event, but yes, I think it's a great idea, and we have to do more, of course, and because as we said, you have to make a case first at the school district level. But yeah, I mean, if there are other ways that you think that we could do that more effectively, right? We're welcome to that. And for us, for early ed, just making the case to start early, right? And go through, but it has to be a process that it's not only early childhood, it has to continue, right? Hopefully on K-12. And that's something that the message is so important, right? If we only have early childhood programs that are great and bilingual, and then they go to an English only kindergarten, it's like, we don't want that. We want kids to have the experience from hopefully birth through 12, and then making the case with the state board and at the school level, it's huge. And we're open to ideas, and because California is so huge, it's like, how do we do it in a way that it's efficient and we can scale it? And Patty, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I great question, Stephen. I would add, I'm a big believer in cross-sector partnerships. And when we look at education, we automatically, of course, think of our school board members who are having the vote, but they're connected to a community, a municipality, a county, a state. Those and the business community, your chambers, your economic development councils, everyone has a stake in education. We're talking not just about from our children, but we're talking about the future as well. So that political will should come from every direction, and really that partnership should be looked at in every direction. We talk about treasures, talents, and time, right? And sometimes we want to do it all, but if we just kind of take a little piece at a time to work with our schools, and how do we develop first that knowledge that this is an investment, and it's a good investment. And when we're talking about better academic scores, right? We're talking about, workforce development. There's actual outcomes, this is research-based, or actual outcomes. So how can we work together then to make it come to fruition, whether it's in a school district or throughout the state? So I would say as we bring all those various voices together, it builds a bigger case. Partner with local CBOs as well, who are also working on school campuses. Go on a tour, give us a call. I will work on that, because sometimes it's seeing it. We can read about it, we can see the data, but we're actually in the classroom and we're seeing that come to life, and we're seeing what that changes are coming. That makes a big difference.
I'll say that, to add on to both of those comments, I mean, this is what we hope this report helps with, Stephen. I mean, we hope that, you can walk around with this and you can make a cross-sector case, you can make the business case, you can say, in addition to all the great research that already existed out there, this is just one more thing to stack on top of it, to say, we know that this will raise incomes. We know that this will boost educational attainment. We know that this will help the most needy families in the state make ends meet, like all of these things that Abby went over. And so, Abby and I sit within the Bay Area Council's research arm, but we're just a team of 5 people. The Bay Area Council sitting behind me is actually 30-something folks, all advocates. And this is something that we have a senior vice president of public policy, Matt Regan, who works on this. And so over the next year, maybe not at the school district level, but certainly at the regional and state level, he'll be walking around with this report, advocating for everything that Patricia and Patty just said. So, happy to be a part of the team.
I would add, just to look up on online, Global 2030, California Global California 2030 is what it is, and it's just an initiative through CDE. But they include a lot of research, so it might be one place to look, just to try to find, just show that, like, the state has said that this is a goal, and don't forget that although we're talking a lot about the benefits for English learners, for students who speak other languages at home other than English, multilingual programs are a benefit to everyone, including English only speakers who only speak English at home and who are going to learn another language through multilingual programs. And so I would, I'll put the link in the chat, but Global 2030, I think that on their website, it'll include a lot of information, including like the research around the benefits of multilingual education and educational benefits of multilingual education. And yeah. Any other questions folks have?
I have one more question. It's often, I think, challenging to understand as a parent, how much should you work on, for example, the child to be learning to read in one language versus the other. So I'm wondering if you ever have any kind of speaker resources of somebody that can kind of talk about that, or just advice to parents when they are trying to raise these multilanguage children.
Patty, I noticed that you put the multilingual literacy website. Do you want to speak to that?
Actually, I put several resources that you can reach out to that are specific for parents, that provide some tools, that provide some guidance. There's some videos in there. So various little nuggets of inspiration and maybe some guidance as you're working with the different age groups. That would be helpful.
We just did a back to school update at our multilingual toolkit website, specific for that. So you should check it out too. And there are a few resources there too.
Any other questions? If not, I'm going to pass it to Patrick to wrap it up for us.
Thank you so much, Zadie. On behalf of the Bay Area Council, the Sobrato Philanthropies, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you so much, Zadie, Patty, Patricia. Thank you for many of you who are on this call, provided feedback and comments to the report. please go out and use this however you see fit. Everything the Economic Institute does is available publicly on our website. Send folks the PDF, the link, all those sorts of things. And just thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.